When you speak, please speak into the microphone because it is being live streamed. If you don't speak into the microphone, they can't hear you. I get upset. What's going on? Yeah, thank you. Okay, do we have any more committee members who have arrived? You're on the committee, okay, if you don't mind, find a seat at the table, one of the tables, please. You can sit right here if you want to. So, hi, Mike. What is your name? Taylor Hargrove. Okay.
How's it going? think we're gonna go ahead and get started. I guess everybody's here. We're gonna try to do this as quickly as we can. I know everybody's time is valuable, and I do appreciate everyone being willing to serve on this committee. The first thing I think we're gonna do is go around and, well, I guess we'll just go in order. I know one of my designees is not here tonight. His son's in a championship basketball game, which I can understand. I was there last night with my grandson. So, Nancy, we're gonna start with you. We'll start with District 1, then we'll go to District 2, District 3. We'll just do it in that order, just to introduce yourselves. Okay.
Nancy Patty from District 1.
Okay, who's District 2?
Meg Day from District 2.
Okay.
Nicole Galetta, District 3.
Kristen Killingsworth, District 3.
Paula Wilson, District 4.
James McKissick, District 5.
Angela Favaloro, District 5.
Lynn Hunter, District 6.
We can share
Jay Price, District 7.
And also David Kelman from District 7.
Kelsey Anderson, District 8.
Taylor Hartgrove, District 8.
Loretta Lowe, District 9.
Wayne Prayer, Children's County System, District 9.
Okay, so every district has someone here. Good. Kathy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you,
I'm
Rhonda?
fine. Okay, everybody needs to get their microphones. Like they say, this is live stream. And so everyone needs to get their microphone where when you speak into it so you can be heard. Okay, like I said, I do appreciate everyone. I hope we don't have to have too many meetings. Tonight's just going to be mostly an informational and organizational type meeting. Because I need your input about how you think would be the best way to proceed with the information that we have and what we're trying to accomplish on this committee. The purpose of this committee is to review the Hamilton HCDE policies pertaining to the selection of books in our libraries and other reading material placed in our school by outside organizations. After the board was made aware of books of concern in our libraries, it was evident the board policies pertaining to library book selection needed to be reviewed to ensure the same standard for selection is used across the district. We also want to be sure that the policy reflects our community standards. After our committee finishes its work, I will submit our findings and suggestions to the board. The board will take any recommendations from this committee under their review for consideration. That's the plan. We don't make policy. The school board is the only people who make policies. We're going to take what we find to them, and then we will move on from there as a board. This is just going to be an informational and organizational meeting. I not only want for it to be informational for this committee, I also want it to be informational to the public. For this reason, I have asked that these meetings be live streamed. I would also like to have all information in this packet, as well as other information that we presented to this committee, put on the school website for everyone to be able to see. Of course, we've all introduced ourselves. I want to introduce you to Sherry. Are you back there, Sherry? Sherry Ford. She's the one who will kind of be your contact person. If you can either contact me or you can contact Sherry, whichever one of us, if you need some information. But she's probably the one you've been communicating with. So, and right up front, I want to tell you some of this material. To me, usually you don't get discussed, and mixed company. I'm not real. Even though I'm pretty much willing to discuss almost anything, some of these things are just even a little hard for me to discuss. Some of the things in some of these books, but I do want to apologize for that. Right up front, some of this language I don't use in my everyday life. We're not allowed to be used in our home. I feel like James Dobson did when he said that he served on a pornographic committee one time. He said, I didn't want to do that because now those images are in my head, and I just don't like that. And I feel that way about some of the things that I've read in some books, and it just is very disturbing to me. But anyway, I'm going to go over this packet of material and tell you what it is, what some of these things are. You may be able to use them as we go through and review some of the books. The first thing that I wanted everybody to do is to see the policies that we have regarding material in our libraries, and also material that have been placed in our schools. So we are not reviewing any kind of material that has to do with curriculum. That's not what this committee is for. That's if we may do another committee at some time. Someone else may do another committee, I don't know, to review some curriculum, but that's not what we're here for. This is just strictly for books that are in the library and supplemental material that's been put into our classrooms, and also some outside material that are brought in from outside groups that have not been vetted by anyone. We don't really even know what they are. And so, so we have policies, and some of the policies may not be clear. We may need to beef up some of these policies to kind of accomplish, I guess, a goal to ensure that some of these books do not get into the shelf if we agree that some of these books do not meet up to community standards. And I think after some of the parents see this, they will probably agree as well. So anyway, if you will look through here, some of these things have been highlighted just to show you, like for instance, the selection of instructional material other than textbooks. If you go on down, it mentions, says the director of schools, it's on line 25, the director of schools or designee will establish administrative procedure for review and selection of materials subject to this policy. Particular attention will be paid to addressing the suitability of instructional materials that include content which might be considered sensitive by parents or students. For example, materials that contain coarse language, graphic violence, explicit sexual content, illegal use of drugs or alcohol. So there's one policy that mentions coarse language there. Another one, rights and responsibility. It says each student has the responsibility to, on line 18, it says refrain from libel, slanderous remarks, and obscenity in verbal and written expression. Another one addressing the advertising and distribution of materials in the schools. It says the principal shall screen all materials prior to distribution to ensure their appropriateness. The principal may prohibit materials that, in line 22 says, are obscene, lewd, or sexually explicit. There's a few of those, and this one right here, Sherry's not marked, and I forgot which, this one right here. That's just the reconsider, okay. I see out there. Okay, that's the one. Okay, now, we'll go over that in a minute. So also our code of acceptable behavior is the one that says digital, it has digital citizenship statement on it, but really we're looking at the code of conduct for students. And in there it says students are not to use obscene, profane, threatening, or disrespectful language or images in any communications with HCS faculty and staff. These actions are prohibited as indicated in the Code of Acceptable Behavior. The Code of Acceptable Behavior, for those that don't know, is online, and you can look at it, and it tells for every infraction what the punishment will be. And it's quite lengthy, so I just ran off some of these pages. It says students must use the email address and profile pictures as appropriate for educational environment. Email addresses that use profanity or otherwise may be construed as offensive shall not be permitted in correspondence with HGS faculty and staff. Then you go on over to the next page. Again, it mentions students are not to use obscene, profane, threatening, or disrespectful language or images in any communications with HGS students. These actions are prohibited as indicated in the Code of Acceptable Behavior. Okay, now when I started talking about having this committee, I was told it was a violation of First Amendment rights. I've heard all kinds of issues. First Amendment rights do not mean you can say anything anytime you want, especially to children. As we speak, the Tennessee is looking at some new legislation involving obscenity for minors, being used with minors. And Sherry, I know it's here. I know I don't have a mark. That I have a hand on. Okay. Now this is the new legislation that they're looking at the state. It has not been passed yet, but it probably will be. So these are laws regarding obscenities and sexual conduct, and those it says materials harmful to minors. That's something I think we also need to be cognizant of. You can look at that at your own and see if the material that we're going to be looking at is going to meet up to this standard. Also, for those that think that you can say anything you want anytime you want, we all know that's not true. For instance, every school board meeting, when you speak to the school board, you are a delegate, they read a statement of what you can say and what you can't say. And it says, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office for a meeting with the superintendent. It goes on and on and on. And so even the school board, even we, limit what you can say. And so for those that think we can't limit what can be said to students, I think you're wrong. I think that is exactly our job as parents and school board members to know what is being put out there for our students. And like I say, this is mostly informational, and a lot of parents don't know this because I, as a school board member, didn't know it until Moms for Liberty read some excerpts and gave us, the school board, some excerpts from some books. Some of these books, and then these are just some books of concern that I made a list of. These are books of concern that have been brought to my attention. I don't know what age group these are. Some of them I have read, some of them I have not. I think this board needs to decide, first of all, you need to understand the process by which these books are placed in our libraries and the process by which outside groups are allowed to put books into our classroom that are not vetted by anyone. We need to fix the policy to address that. Because one of our policies now, and if you look at the very bottom of one of the policies, I think it's something that needs to really be looked at. And I guess we have so many policies. Our policy book is what, almost 500 pages long. It's really long. And at the bottom it says 4.402. I can find it. Yeah, there it is. The last paragraph, I think it got put in there, and it's one of those policies, as Kathy Lennon well knows, we went through policies for months and months and months, literally. And I don't know how this quite got by without raising a red flag with me, but it says on line 9 of page 2 of 4.402, it says, parental disclosure and prior notice does not include books located in the school library or classroom that are intended to provide optional reading material on each student's individual reading level. These books will continually be monitored. However, There may be sensitive content contained in these books that was not previously reviewed by school personnel. That is a problem for me. That we have handing out kids to let kids read books that nobody has looked at. That we're just let them have them. Parents should alert the administration about any sensitive content that is found in these optional materials. Administration will then undertake the reconsideration process as outlined in policy 4.403. I have a problem with that part of that policy, and I think that that's maybe how some of these things have, because this one was updated in 12/13/18 is when that, and each one of these policies have a date on them when they were approved. So the way that you have to, and this is what I've said, if we take care of these things on the front part, we probably won't have so many parents filing letters to request to reconsider forms if we take care of this on the front end and they're not put there to begin with. Then we won't have to worry about a lot of that. I did write, and you do have the email in there, I did write Dr. Towns when she was here, and I asked her, I said, I would like to know how books with inappropriate words, even GD, wind up in the libraries in our reading list. Who is responsible for vetting these books? I found out that the school board didn't even really know the process by which books were placed into the libraries. I just assumed maybe that all high schools had the same books. Maybe they were sent, you know, a list of books. These are the books you're going to get. I don't know. I guess I just never really gave it a lot of thought. I didn't realize that librarians, and there's some librarians here. I think you're a librarian. I talked to about 4 librarians myself this week and found out the way that they selected their books. And it was all over the map. You know, it doesn't seem, they could pretty much put in the library what they wanted. So you can see if you get different personalities, different backgrounds, different. I think we need a standard by which all these books are measured instead of everybody just kind of doing what they want. And that's one thing I hope to maybe set forth in a policy that's a little bit, I guess, kind of adheres a little bit more to our community standards than some of the reading material that's out there. But Nakia did lay out in this answer to me the way the process, and so it's written there, so you can look over the process about how they're chosen. I know I see Blake Freeman over there, and I know he was on. His name is mentioned in here about wanting some of the people, and maybe if we need a little bit more clarification about exactly how close they look at the library books, or if the librarian's just allowed to do what they want to. I'm not real sure how that works. But I did have a librarian that said that when she got into the library, that she took a lot of the books off of her shelf that were on there when she got there, because she felt like they were inappropriate for the grade level that she had, and she gave them to another school for their high school library because she just didn't think they were appropriate for the elementary school where she was teaching. So I guess it's just there's just a lot of autonomy for a librarian to have, I think, to just do what they feel like that they want to do. I think we need to have a little bit more say about what's in the libraries. Okay, Wayne.
Yeah, sorry, and please forgive me in advance if you mentioned this. I want to go back to the policy. When you mentioned the policy, especially the one that provides December 13th, what is the process for revising that policy? Is that something that's the school board?
Yes, the school board does it. We go over them. We have our attorney there. We go over them, and Kathy was head of the policy committee, and we went over hundreds. We have to we have to review them. Is there a time limit?
There's a timeline
for each policy. Like some of them have to be reviewed every 2 years, some of them every 5 years, some of them, you know, and some of ours hadn't been reviewed in years and years, and we got them up to date. I think we've done them all at this point in the time frame, but still, like I say, I don't know how this one got really past me, because we do go over them at school board meetings. And, of course, some nights we were doing 25 at a time. So, it was a little bit, and I don't remember that. I don't know if we added that in 18 or if it has always been there. I'm just not real sure. I'd have to go back and look at the old policy before it was revised. I really don't know. But they're simple enough to fix. The school board just has to vote on it. We just fix it and move on. So that's what I need to know from this committee, how we need to fix this. Also, we have, like I say, we do have outside groups that have put reading rooms in 15, I think they told us 15 of our schools. And they're putting books in there that no one has vetted. There's not a list of those books. We don't know.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm here representing District 5, but I'm also an advocate and volunteer with the group that you're referencing, Moms for
Yes.
Social Justice.
Right.
And I would like to clarify that we did work with the Opportunity Zone office at the time. Those books were listed. We've actually been very, very transparent about this. We had organizations, we had grants, we had to submit all the books that we donated. Many of the books that we donated were just an extension of the school library. They were actually duplicates or just renewed copies that were donated, and they were not curated by our organization. We worked with local bookstores, librarians, and literacy coaches and experts to curate that list. So it was not just an adulterated book shelving.
Okay.
It was just to
Did
clarify that
it just go
document.
through the principal at your school, or did the
No, ma'am, it went to
board?
the administration at the district level.
So
Through the
they
opportunity-
did.
the
So
office
they
of-
did review the books that are in your reading center.
Yes, there were lists that were supplied. I can't say what they did once they received those lists. I can't speak for them, but those.
Okay,
those
so that
were-
list is available.
I can supply the list. I'm not sure.
Okay, do you have the list of all 15?
I don't have it with me right now.
Okay,
ma'am,
well, I
but
know, but can you
I
do
would
that?
encourage you to give you the contact information for our organization so that you can reach out and get all the information that you need for clarification.
Okay, so for all 15, they have a list of all the books, correct?
I think we have all the books that were purchased through the grant. That could be in various, there were different age groups, it was multifaceted. So,
That would be great. I would love to see that list.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Thurman?
Yes.
So are we just looking at library books? You mentioned books in classrooms, because I know that's like two different tigers, or two different animals, I think is how it goes. So are we just looking at library books?
Mainly, well, and I say that because I have been made aware that there are teachers who have, by their own admission, have said that they have, because they posted in chat rooms and things like that, that they are running libraries out of their rooms for restricted books
Okay.
that parents have to sign for, but yet they are letting kids check these books out, and they say they have a waiting list.
With
So-
the parent permission, they're allowed
Yeah,
to
they
get
say
some
that they have parent permission. And I'm wondering if, and then also I did have a student that said that she let people have books out of her locker at school for books that were restricted or had been banned other places. So I'm just not real sure, people can do whatever they want to on their own time. I'm just wondering if that is in our school. Like I say, I don't know, and the attorney's not here, exactly.
How far we're gonna go yet?
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
not really sure because all of this was news to me. I had no idea that a lot of these things were in the classroom. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I just didn't know. So
And
I don't know.
then my next question is, I as well met with a couple librarians, and they went through the Hamilton County Library Handbook with me, which is one of the most impressive things I've seen our district put out. And it says that there's two places students can go to read online books. One is the Hamilton County Library, and then one is another place, and I cannot remember off the top of my head. Sora, thank you, okay. Are we gonna look at what's online there as well, or just
Well, that's a
paper
great idea.
books?
That's the reason we need this committee. That's a good idea.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And also, I'm sorry.
I was just saying,
can't see you down there.
so what's up here right now is the
Okay.
public access catalog. And
Yes.
one of the things that you had mentioned is wanting the list of all of the books that were on any shelves in the libraries. Is
No.
that not already?
No, I'm not talking about in our library. I know this is what
Okay.
this is. I was talking about the books that were placed by outside organizations into our classroom.
Into the classroom. So we're
Yes.
not discussing what is on school library shelves. This is about what is in individual classrooms on
No, we're
class.
talking about library books and those books as well. All reading material that's in the except the curriculum. We're not getting into the curriculum. Yes, that's exactly what this is. You can go on, where's the website there? You guys, I get it. Okay, yeah, library.hcde.org. You can go on there, you can click on a school, and you can search their library catalogs there. So
Miss-
that would be a good resource for you, I think.
Ms. Thurman, since we've seemed to have opened up the discussion a little bit about the scope of what we'll be reporting back to the board, and I understand, of course, that, obviously the board is the policy-making body, and we're providing recommendations, and you guys can decide what you do and don't use, and in fact, that's your job. You guys were elected. I would suggest, as we're starting to get into the scope, we think about, like you said, there's the balance between autonomy and central office staff, and I would suggest that any policy that we put together, we do have to remember, possibly stating the obvious, that the teachers and librarians are, of course, licensed professionals. We have only so many people in the central office, and whatever we can do to provide guidance in whatever we suggest to y'all, guidance to the professionals so they know how they are expected to make decisions will go a long way, as opposed to, like you said, there is a process right now to, after the fact, fix things. Well, let's say that we do decide, somebody decides after the fact that they don't like this book, it doesn't seem to have been chosen, or another librarian comes in and realizes that that book doesn't seem age appropriate. It would be good to have some documentation from the original professional who let that book in to explain, why they chose it. And it may turn out that there's something in the book that they felt had merit to it, or it may turn out that nobody ever vetted that book. So that's just my suggestion for, as we think about the scope, is we bear in mind who will be using this in the end in the policy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, James.
So I had a couple of questions. One was, will we be getting copies of all these books so that we can read them and, discuss them, not pages that are taken out of context? I think, we would want to have a full picture of the book, and like my brother here said, also talk to some of the library and school professionals so that they can place that in context as well in the curriculum, in the lived lives of students and their communities. My other comment is just looking around, and I've heard a couple of times people say, or you say, community standards. My question is this committee reflective of the demographics of our school system? Is that yes or no? And then if it is not, then how will we come to any community standard when so much of our community is not at this table?
Well, we let everyone pick two people. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you do. I really don't care. That's why we try to get as diverse a group as we could get, to let everybody choose their own. We didn't say you can't choose this kind of person or that kind of person or this person or whatever. We just said choose two people.
Well, maybe
And
we need to
we're pretty
keep
diverse
trying.
on the school board, so I figured that, this committee would probably be reflective of the community. So like I say, since I don't know anybody's background, except for Nancy and a few of you others I know, but other than that, and I know Kathy, of course, and some of the rest of you, no,
Ms. Thurman.
few, yes.
That's one of the reasons why I have the question on the policy, because I think if you have clear policy in there, no matter the demographics, and
Right.
if it's followed, then that will represent the entire district as a whole.
Yeah.
one of the questions too, and I believe it was Angela mentioned those supplemental books that were installed into the library. Did they follow that same standard as far as them being installed into the library? I know you said that you handed them over, but do you know if the principal or the board that you submitted it to followed the same standard that was currently in place for the standard library books?
I mean, I know you're asking this question right now, but if this is a full discussion about our one organization, one community partner, and what we've donated to the books, then we can set a separate meeting for our organization to discuss that. I don't have all that material with me. I came here as a representative of District 5. There are plenty of community organizations, lots of teachers, everybody who have donated many, many, many books. Most of the books that all of your educators have in the classroom are not paid for by stakeholders. They are donated from the wonderful citizens in our community. So that's a separate conversation on its own. I understand and totally get the concern and wanting to have that knowledge and wanting to protect your children. I think that is a consensus amongst most parents. We want to do what's best for our children. When it boils down to what's best for our child versus what's best for our neighbor's child, we're a mecca, we have multiple faiths, we have different cultures. Speaking to James's comment, what's at the table is definitely not representative of Chattanooga, and I would encourage that we could remedy that in some form or fashion. We could alter our plan. But to carry on further on that, I did have a question. He was asking about if we could receive books. I know some things about obscenity and how it doesn't apply to the First Amendment and some things like that. One thing that the Supreme Court had a hard time defining obscenity, and they used something called the Miller test.
Right.
And it has 3 parts. I think that if we were to become some form of authority on obscenity, which I'm not sure that I want to be the authority on obscenity, since we have 9 justices who struggle with that, and I know that I'm way below that pay grade. But considering, whether the average person in our representative community here finds the work taken as a whole negatively, whether the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by the applicable state law, and whether the work has taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And I think some of the ones that have called into question have incredible literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, and that's why they have won the awards and why they're there. That's my personal take, and why I think that that's such a consideration before we would just remove something when we all have the option on these. This thing picks up everything. We all, on these optional reading materials, we can say no as parents at any point. We all have Remind and 24 other apps and PowerSchool and everything else that we can reach out to our teachers. I don't know when people quit talking to your teachers and your principals. I can call my teacher at any time.
That's what we're doing.
I know, but at any point, my child who was sensitive to horror books and scary stories in 3rd grade, I had no problem calling up my Hamilton County teacher, not calling, emailing, and saying, hey, I know that this is a great book for some, but when my child goes to the shelf, do you think we could steer them a different way? And it was no problem. My child didn't come home with the books anymore, and we could even implement that into PowerSchool so it's discreet and not embarrassing to these other kids, just like we did with other policies in the last year. We can add something to PowerSchool that says, hey, I would like for my child to steer clear of these certain things, just like they use PowerSchool for all these other things.
Hi, as the librarian representative for Hamilton County, there's a real simple fix to that. I don't have access to PowerSchool, and so what I do have access to is our library program. And I could walk over if Ms. Ford would let me, but I can easily show you how you can put a message on any child's account. And so I could go in under my own child, pull up his name, and right beside it, when he goes to check out, there's a red box that comes up. And you just say, you know, please steer them away from objectionable content. I've not had that happen in my 19 years as a Hamilton County librarian, but I've also only been in elementary school. And I understand that the majority of these books are not elementary level reading. But that is a super easy fix that we could put into anything, and I could do a 1-minute video to show all the librarians how to do it, and that'd be a quick fix.
Good information, thank you very much, appreciate that. Kathy?
Thank you. I think an opt-out policy would be exceptional in knowing that you have the access to do that and that you have the willingness to share that with other librarians. To me, would be an easy thing to implement into a policy. Rhonda, that the one in that the reconsideration of instruction or materials. I mean, I don't see why that could not just slide right in there and we could have an opt-out policy for all parents, that if they do not want their child to read a certain book, that's their choice. But I don't think that it's fair to not to totally remove the book just because one or two parents don't want to have that book read. Now, the question about having the materials in the classroom, I do think that possibly that we could, you might even have some suggestions of that. I don't know how, as a teacher for over 25 years, I also kept books in my classroom because I always wanted my students to read. So if there was ever a downtime, they'd go get a book. So I don't want to do away with teachers having books in their library. It's crucial because that's
Kathy,
what we
that's not what
do.
I'm talking about. I mean, this teacher she really was just wanting to do the restricted and the banned books for them to check out. I mean, she was just kind of bragging about it. So that's, I think that was the issue. You know, if you can't get it in the library, then you can come to my class and I'll give it to you, kind of thing. It's not. I mean, I've donated a lot of books to my kids' library as well, so I understand that. But I don't think that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about. And then that'll be on the news tomorrow. Rhonda wants to ban all teacher books. I mean, you know, I know how that goes, but that is not the case. I assure you. But anyway, okay, Lawyer.
Talking about community standards, I think just to lay it out easily is, I don't think there's anybody in any community that would approve of Playboy magazine being put on the shelf at school, okay? I don't think anybody here wants that, right? So what's the difference in these explicit images that are laying on the shelves in the schools, in some of these books that we're talking about, and Playboy magazine?
If I could.
Not burning books,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about burning books, I'm not talking about banning books. I'm talking about appropriate literature. There's a billion books out there that are appropriate literature to be in on school shelves, in libraries and in classrooms. The school shelves is not a place for these vile books to be. If you want your children, why would we have to opt in, opt out? Most of us never even knew these books existed in the schools until recently. We all agree on that, I'm pretty sure. I know Rhonda said she wasn't aware of all this stuff. I wasn't aware of all this stuff. So these parents that are not aware, why do they have to go opt in, opt out, you know, all this other stuff? If you want your children to be exposed to this literature, go buy the books. Go rent the books from the public library. But don't lay it on the shelf for a third grader to accidentally pick up one of these books and go to seeing sexual activity, period. I mean, it's just not appropriate for schools. I don't think that anybody in this room could say it is.
Okay, so we were talking about, there are some things that are just, I think, common decency, whether it's, you call it community standards is what I call it, but common decency. Like I said, the one reason I wanted some of these books out here, just to give you some idea, and these two just happen to be the authors, because these are two that have been already, I guess, put in for to be reconsidered. And so these were two that already had somebody, like I say, some parents from had already sent in to have reviewed.
Ms. Thurman,
Now-
may I ask, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Is the purpose of our gathering here tonight to kind of outline the scope of our committee's work?
Yes.
Okay.
So
No, I'm just, I don't want us to get too in the weeds.
Okay, okay. Well,
Of the
this is
specific,
what-
of the specific books.
Okay.
Because I
Yeah,
don't think,
we're
I don't
not-
think any of us here are
I want
prepared to
people
talk
to
about
understand
specific
what
books.
we're talking about.
Well, I hope all of us
Okay,
are
no, I know,
familiar.
I want, there people are watching, and I want them, they do not see what we're seeing here. And I want them to understand, and like I say, this is the reason I want it on our website. I want them to see the language, and people say, well, you know, we take it out of context. Well, the F word on a page of a book about 10 times, I think it will not meet up to hardly anybody's community standards.
How many?
And I want
Hectors
people to
of
understand what we're
sex.
talking about. And some of these about sex and, you know, shooting people, blowing their brains out, things like that. A lot of parents don't realize these are in this book. This is why I just did these two. Well, actually, there may be three. There's three. Yeah, because there's another one that was given, was sent to me last week. And this pretty explicit, I think you would say. I just want people to understand that I'm not just talking about a few, you know, just simple cuss words, you know. One lady said, well, you know, the word ass is around there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about GD. I'm talking about MF. I'm talking about the F word ad nauseum. Talking about some really sexually explicit encounters. Those are the things that I'm talking about. And whether you're taking them out of context or what, I don't know how you can take that out of context, really. Because can't think of any time that should be in a child's book. And that's just me. Like I said, we'll let the community decide. Their tax money's paying for this. So we will see.
So,
We
Ms.
need to make
Thurman,
it-
what I would
So what I want to do is, now that you have this information, I want you to figure out how we're going to move forward on this. I don't know whether we're going to divide up into, do elementary, middle, and high. I don't know if that's the best way to tackle this. Did you ask about getting copies of the book? I don't have copies of all of these books. Most of them are online. If you want to look at them, they're there, because I don't know which books you want to look at. I'm not here to say, these are the books we're going to look at. That's not why I'm here. I want you, if parents have books that are listening, if they have books they would like for the committee to look at, maybe you can divide those up and look at them. That's what I had the committee here, like I say, it's an organizational meeting, to see how we're going to move forward on this. What do you think is the best way to move forward?
I think a great way to move forward is to read the librarian handbook. I felt like earlier you said that there's no policy in place of how books get on the shelves in the library. And there is not a policy, but there is a handbook that's been updated based on the Hamilton County policy that you were talking about, and it's quoted in there. Especially you gotta put that little tape around the spine of the book so you know where it goes on the shelf. And then it has to go through, anyways, it's laid out in here. And then the reconsideration steps are probably the most robust process I've seen of how books are reconsidered. And it's in here for a robust group to look at. And this is, like Angela said, far above my pay grade. Again, very impressed with the librarian handbook and how the reconsideration process works. But I would say if we're going to look at library books, the next step would be to read the librarian handbook and see if we think it's at fault. Because it's, yeah, where's the YouTube? Is that where? Y'all, everyone read the librarian handbook. It's excellent. They've done a great job.
Well, I have actually looked at the librarian handbook, and my question was this. If the librarian handbook is so clear, how did these books end up there?
Well,
That was my question. If it was so clear and everybody knew exactly what it meant and what it said, how do these books get through the cracks? I mean, seriously.
A large majority of these books, as a librarian, so first of all, let me give you my background. I have a master's degree. We all have master's degrees in order to be librarians. And we're trained in, so I have a library with 11,000 books. And I have an elementary library, and a lot of them are picture books. But I can safely say I have not read every single library book in my library because I teach 6 classes a day and I have 30 minutes to do everything else. And I have a family at home. So I can't possibly do that. So what I do is I rely on the resources I have at hand that I was taught to use in library school. I went to the University of Tennessee. It's ALA certified. There are only like 50 ALA certified schools in the country. So I feel very confident in my education. But in doing so, just like in the librarian handbook that Meg referenced, and I have copies if anyone is interested, it could put you to sleep too, so I'm sorry. But part of it is that we read reviews in order to pick books. And so a lot of these books have high reviews. And we can only, I don't have a way to take a book and read it before I purchase it. It's just not how book vendors work right now. And so I have to go off of the resources I have at hand, one of which is teaching books, which Dr. Parker pays for us to have, which is also a teaching resource. And so I read those reviews and then I say, okay, does this sound right for my population? I'm in an upper middle class school, I recognize that. What my kids are interested in is not what my kids at my urban school that I taught at would necessarily be interested in. And so I have to just take that information and do the best I can with it. Do things slip through the cracks? 1,000%. But I also know that I can look and say, okay, this book says it's good for 3rd through 5th grade. Well, I'm in elementary school, then that's perfect for my school. And so, and the reviews are good, and there's multiple reviews of the book. And so that's how I do my best work. Then I take teacher input. What do my teachers need to support the EL curriculum or their science curriculum? And then I take parent requests sometimes. This parent is struggling with something at their house. Do you have anything? Well, I didn't have anything current, so maybe I should get something to help that parent. So I try to take all of my stakeholders, which are all the people I've described, and make the best informed decisions that I can. And so I think all of us are trying to do that, you know, and these books, Google them. They've got reviews, and that's what we use. And I don't know how else. And we have the selection of resources here. I can share it with you all, but this is what is part of our job.
Yeah, well, the selection of resources are listed also in the letter from Dr. Towns to me. She lists the resources. I think.
And this was updated since the email that you received.
One of the books that was brought to the attention not too long ago, I did Google and looked at the reviews, and honestly, I was appalled. And as I mentioned earlier, I have 3 children, 1st, 2nd grade, and 5th grade in the county school system. The book that I looked at 2 weeks ago, although it's not for elementary school, when they get older, I don't want them reading about rubbing their private parts together. I've heard and seen on social media that, well, they'll get the same information on TikTok. So if you are okay with them being on TikTok, you should be okay with them reading library books. It's not the same, okay? Because number one, my kids, even my 5th grader, is not on TikTok. There's no cell phone. That's a personal choice that I've made. I feel like that the content, although it may have good reviews from society, still should not necessarily, in some specific instances, be inside the school library. I've also heard, well, there's a group of people wanting to ban books. I'm not in favor of banning books, but I also believe in oversight and policy that I referenced earlier to help really put the burden on the school system to ensure that the appropriate books are in place.
Well, yeah, and then too, you know, when we get ready to choose, select textbooks at the school system, we may have 10 textbooks and you choose one. Does that mean you're banning the other 9? No, that's not what that means.
If I could just say, you know, you talked about
can't
what
see.
are the next steps. What would be very helpful for me is the policies that you talked about, that were highlighted, to have someone like walk us step by step through them so that we can have a clear understanding of them. And then also this.
What, the policies?
Yeah.
They're, you can read them. I mean, that's why I'm giving them to you
So
to read. We don't have time to
I'm
go
not a
over.
lawyer. I'm an arts administrator.
Well, no, we're not.
But I would like, I'm telling you what I would like.
Okay.
What I would like is, and what would be helpful for me as, you know, a community member, is to understand the policy deeply, to go through the book and be able to talk to and hear from librarians, for someone to walk me through the process of what actually happens when a book is challenged, because all this is brand new to me right now. And I want to make wise and informed decisions, so I need the information to be able to do that.
Well, we don't have time to go step by step over these policies. That's why I gave them to you, because we try to make them simple enough for parents to be able to understand these policies, what they are. You know, if you need an attorney to talk to, perhaps there is one, but we just don't have time.
But if we're saying we're going to change the policy, shouldn't we go through it to be able to decide what
Well,
we want?
that's why I'm giving it to you. We don't have time. That's it. Read it, and the next time we get together, we can discuss more in depth. This is just giving you information, so you can, you know, I don't know.
I understand.
The next time we get together, if you have some questions about it, you can ask the questions.
I would like that,
And our
to be able
attorney
to
will
ask
probably be
questions.
here.
So
Our attorney will probably be here the next time.
That would be nice.
But I just don't, we just don't have time to go over every one of
What
them.
is the timeline for this process?
We just, that was gonna be my next question to you guys. It depended on how we decide to divide up and what we decide to do.
So I think a first step obviously would be, I guess, to define what obscene, profane, sexually explicit is, because obviously that's not well known around this community. If people masturbating and saying all kinds of curse words is acceptable to some people in the community or the population. And as far as like balancing the different like community and people in it, like we are all going to have to agree on what is safe for our children. If it's safe for your children to look at, you know, sexual content in a book, then are you representing this whole community? Because for me and my part, you are not, because I don't agree with any of that. And as far as saying cuss words, even if it's written in a literary viewpoint that people have done great reviews on and whatnot, it's trash, because if you cannot make your literary stance without using cuss words, then is it really even an art and whatnot? I don't agree with that. So I do think that the first point, because there's a lot of different like people in this room with backgrounds and what they think is right and whatnot, I guess we need to establish, you know, what is obscene, what is profane, and what are going to be our guidelines going forward, because we're not at a consensus on that of something that's acceptable or not.
Well, I think that's why I've said the community standards are just, you know, what the community will accept. And I don't think that this is it, because I think when the word of this gets out there and some people read this, I think they're going to be shocked.
I don't think it's acceptable either. And
It's not acceptable. Like I say, we just have to have things that are not acceptable in the workplace. This is what I've always said about some of these words that these students are allowed to use, and even schools. I tell you right now, we're not following policy about a lot of that either. But we are supposed to be training students to be adults, productive adults in society. This language and this behavior is not acceptable in any workplace that I know, that you will not get fired.
And why are the students not allowed, if they're not allowed when addressing, even as email
Do we have an order of how
or-
we're speaking? I'm just going to clear this. I feel like we're blurting all on top of each other. Can we have a cup or something to put some order to this?
Raise your hand.
I have been sitting here holding my hand.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't mind if she
Go
does,
ahead.
but I know he was
Go
waiting
ahead.
long before I
I'm
was.
sorry.
Yeah,
I can't see him. I'm sorry.
And so what I'd like to, at the risk
Quorum.
of beating a dead horse, remind us all, so we have professionals in the school system, and there are choices that have been made. If something is coming in without anyone vetting it, That is something we need to highlight and recommend. If you do not trust the people who are vetting them, we can't fix that here. It's the job of the school board to make sure that the administration is hiring qualified people or providing the correct oversight to make sure that they're acting in a professional manner. I don't think it's possible for us to nail down here what is and isn't appropriate at all the different grade levels. That's my opinion. I'm just telling you, as a former teacher, it is an extremely vast undertaking, a lot of different considerations at different grade levels, different communities, as people have said. If you provide a way to provide oversight where the teachers or the librarians or the administrators vet something, are forced to maybe, in a way that helps them clarify their own thinking, document what they saw as the benefit of something, that will help. If you think that you are going to be able to just lay down something out of here that will cause all teachers to conform to whatever it is that you hope them to conform to, that's too big an undertaking. And then again, these are professionals. If there are ones that aren't doing their job correctly, we can't fix that here. That's the school board's job to make sure that the administration is actually hiring and keeping qualified people. We can't fix that here if you don't trust your teachers.
Angela, go ahead.
Agree. I kind of wanted to go back to something a long time ago where she was talking about school libraries and how in their database they can put notes. When I was referencing PowerSchool, that was a separate alternative for individual educators in their classrooms. Since their books are not part of that, they would be able to have the recommendation or the request from the parent. I know a lot of people don't want to co-parent with the government, and we don't want, we want to have freedom of choice. I want my children to have intellectual freedom. Other people may want moral convictions and other things to be what's specific to their family. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all have ways we want to raise our children, and we all want the choice to do that for ourselves, regardless of our faith, which we have lots of different faiths in our community, our culture, all of those things. For one person to sit here and say, this is preposterous. You have one person sitting next to you who says, that's not preposterous. So in order to be fair to everyone, we should have the freedom to choose for our children. Being able to speak to our educator, put in our request. You can opt in at the beginning of the year that you have literature, reading material requests that you want to be met throughout the year. It's something easy that they could do at registration. The librarian could also receive that information. What books are there? Because to me, I think of our budgets and having a whole staff who's going to now sit down. Each of your teachers probably have hundreds and hundreds of books in their classrooms. You think it's a few books and that one teacher's behavior? I think that's a specific disciplinary situation. I'm talking to the broad whole who just have books in their classroom because it's been proven through many studies that when they have access to books in their classroom, they're more likely to read. So that's why they're in the classrooms. I'm not opposed to having lists or whatever they need to do to track that, but when I think of the financial and the labor constraint on our educators right now in the environment, I think that's definitely something we have to consider and give a lengthy amount of time in order to incorporate. If we move that way, that's one thing. But
nobody is talking about teachers making lists of books that they have in their room. I am talking about fixing the policy. I don't want lists of books that teachers have in their room. That is not what I'm asking for.
How do you track it?
I'm not trying to track the ones
vet
they
it?
have in their room. I was talking about this specific teacher that said if there are teachers doing that, we need to fix that in the policy that teachers cannot, if books are banned or restricted in the library, they can't take them to their room and check them out to
So
students.
you don't want to
That's
know
what
what's
I'm
in the
talking
classroom
about.
libraries?
Yeah, yes, I do the libraries,
So
but I'm talking about the libraries, not the ones that teachers have in their room for reading, extra reading material for the students that the teachers have put there.
The teachers. Okay. I'm very confused at what your request is.
So
at the
just
moment.
library books on the shelves, not the books that are in the classrooms? You want us to just focus on the library books? Because I felt like earlier you said all the books that are not curriculum, that's what we want to look at, and now it's just the library
But
books.
I know what she's talking about. Like I go in, my kindergarten class, and they may have 75 books in there for the kids to pick and choose. teachers don't have to make a list of that. You're talking about making this arduous process. That's not what I'm not talking about putting any more work on the teachers.
I didn't hear her say that.
I
Do
just
what?
don't understand how you vet or track information without having a list of it. Like, that's fine, don't take a list, whatever you want to do.
Well, the
That's,
lists
I
are
just
up
need
there.
clarification.
The lists are up there in
I
all
totally
these
misunderstood.
libraries, and I haven't gone over all of these lists in all these libraries. This is what I'm concerned about right now. But I was just talking about certain teachers bragging about the fact that they took restricted and banned books and checked them out in their room. That's what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about, like, my grandson goes up and gets a book out of the teachers and reads it. You know, if you have a problem with one of those books, then you can file a recommendation. But you're trying to get out in the weeds. I just want to fix this policy. I want to know how these books are ending up in our libraries with this language in there. And let me tell you what's going to happen. If we don't fix this, I don't know if you're aware, there's legislation right now for the money to follow the child. And it will probably pass. If we don't fix things like this, if we can't even agree that the F word and the GD word and the MF word and all of that are unacceptable for our students, you are going to find out just exactly how upset parents are, because a lot of these teachers are going to be finding another job. We have to fix this. Now, we can get out into the weeds and say, well, you know, you're trying to force your moral compass. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you, what will the community bear? These are their schools. They pay for them. These students belong to these parents. And if we can't fix this, something as simple as this, if we can't agree that this kind of language and illustrations about teaching children to masturbate are not acceptable for our schools, then these parents are going to take their money and they're going to go elsewhere. And when they do, public education is going to continue to deteriorate. Now, that's all I'm asking. I'm not wanting to get out into the weeds. I'm just wanting to know what books are in there. I'm wanting to know. Now, the best way to go about that, if you don't want to be on this committee, if you think it's a waste of time, if you think it's something we can't accomplish, you don't have to be here. We'll put somebody else in your place. But right now, this is what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to try to fix the policy, to fix it to where all the books that are in the classroom are vetted, whether they're brought in from the outside, whether they're put in reading centers or wherever they're put in, that they are vetted. And I did ask for a list of those books, and these library books right now is all that I'm concerned about, because I can't get into all the extra reading materials that teachers have in their rooms right now. That's not what I'm talking about.
So just library books on the shelves?
So just library books right now, and the books that are in reading centers that are being put in there by outside organizations, they should be vetted by the school system. And if they are, and if there's some questionable ones there, we'll find out how they got past the vetting process and fix it in the policy. That's all we're trying to do. There's no sense getting out into the weeds and getting all analytical and all of this stuff out there and trying to muddy the water. That's very basically simple what we're trying to do. But like I say, if we can't fix something as simple as this, then I'm afraid that people are going to find out just exactly how unhappy parents really are. That is who owns this school system. We do not. And I guarantee you, and
I'll
everybody
speak
owns
as
it.
another parent of 3 children in the school system that I disagree with some of the sentiments that have been stated about what parents find acceptable and unacceptable. So I think you'll find as you talk to different people in the community, we have, as Angela said, a wide variety of views and viewpoints and things that we find acceptable or unacceptable for our children.
And if we start to pick how many
You have
cuss words
First
are
Amendment
allowed.
That's why we have to have a community norm. There has to be it can't be up here, it can't be down here. It has to be
Well,
somewhere in
the
here.
children have First Amendment rights as
That's
well.
why we should choose.
But nobody's telling the children what they can say, and are there? Are we?
No, they have First Amendment rights to have access to these materials.
Well, they can. They have them at the bookstore.
They
They have them at the
have-
bookstore.
because this is
Okay,
a school
like
board.
I said, we're looking
These
right
are
now
all
at these
things we need to
policies.
keep in mind.
Excuse me?
These are all things we need to keep in mind.
Okay, yeah, well, like I say, they're all available. Nobody's trying to ban any books, saying whether, if you want, if you can't afford them, maybe the library, can you not go get your child the books that they want?
That's not what we're talking about.
Maybe, I think, because we have so many different views of the specifics, it might make sense for everybody to come up with several categories of things that teachers, librarians should consider when vetting something. We've talked about
That's right.
categories like obscenity, language, and we know that different things are appropriate, different grade levels, different communities. So perhaps the way to have a tool that helps the vetting occur and helps people document why they chose something and helps us also think about how do we get categories here, because we're not all going to agree on those details, but how do we get categories that we all could agree we would like teachers to think about this, even though we each have a different answer for that category. This is what we want to make sure people are thinking about. That's what perhaps we should come up with either by
in the handbook.
brainstorming now or for the next session.
It's in the handbook.
But that's for the librarian's handbook, it's not teachers, it's librarians. Okay, we're gonna have to move on because we'll be here all night. So how do we want to, I think that might be a good idea, just to find out the things that we want to put in here. If you have some books you want to vet, we're not going through, we're not saying we're gonna look at this book and that book, and that's just exactly not what we're doing. If there's a book that's questionable, there's a list of books here that have been sent to me that were questionable. I don't know if any of these are in any of our libraries because I have not checked. If you want to look at some of those, you can.
But how is reading those books going to help us rewrite the policy and look at the policy?
That he was asking about where you're going to read the books. If you want to read the books, you can read the books. I think we just need to make the policy and see if the books, if any of these books don't fit within that policy, then they need to be re-looked at by the administration. And
So are we going to bypass the reconsideration process that the librarians have already outlined?
I said then they can be put through the reconsideration process. That's what I said.
Shouldn't the school board be the body that decides, which it always has been, they're in charge of policy, so wouldn't it not be a good?
That's what I say, we're making recommendations because the board was unaware that some of these books were in there. That's why I say this committee's job is
Just to make recommendations
right,
for
make
a
it
new policy,
That's
but then
right.
the school board actually, it's their charge to write policy
That's
for.
That's what, we went over that in the beginning, Kathy, I guess you weren't here.
Okay.
But anyway, yes, that, we are to make recommendations to the board. We're not gonna write a new policy, we're just gonna correct some of the policies that we have, or beef them up, or rewrite them, or whatever. That's what we're going, that's what, the recommendation from this committee, I guess, if we can.
Can we all get a copy of the librarian handbook to read?
I've got 5. Sorry.
It's all, I think.
I just don't see how we could do anything better than what they have professionally done here. And it has been, yes, and it already exists. And it's a living document, so it's updated in September or October. I think it was October. And the email that you have printed out from Dr. Towns is from August 24th. So I don't know if this email contradicts in the handbook. I don't know, but the librarian handbook is by far the best tool that we have. And it creates room for the subjectiveness of our different communities, because we are one big community made up of different ones. And I just want to encourage everyone in this room to just, it's so impressive. And like Nicole said, it's not perfect and stuff gets by, but there is an appeal process that if you don't like this, the appeal is to go to the school board with the book.
Okay, yes, and that's true, like I said. Hold it,
So
there's 2 ladies that had their hand raised, you and you.
I just want.
Sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
Okay.
Did you have something to say?
Yes. So, hi, I'm Kelsey. I am a ELA teacher in an urban middle school in Hamilton County. And I just wanted to clarify, you said that we wanted to focus on library books, right, that are in our libraries, not in the classrooms. But then you also said that you wanted to look at the books that have been donated by outside organizations. I feel like we need to clarify that because in classrooms, that's where a lot of those outside organizations will donate to directly to the classrooms and not the school library. So I know that, whatever list that we were talking about, the list that you said at the beginning that you could maybe get to us with the books that have been donated,
It would also be helpful to clarify, are these all donated to the library or to the classrooms? Because as a teacher who's in the schools every single day, I can tell you, I'm an ELA teacher. This is my first full year as the teacher of record. There are like 1,000 books on my bookshelf in my classroom, and I do not have the time to have read all of those. I am so busy all the time, and so, reading all of those is kind of like impossible right now for most teachers, especially first-year teachers or younger teachers who are just kind of coming in and getting these books handed to them. I was just books were shoved in my hand when I first started. So I think we need to clarify, you said not to focus on the classroom books, just the library books, but also what the outside organizations have donated. So in that way, we need to figure out, is that classroom-wise, or are we literally just focusing on the school library books?
Well, these reading centers, they come into a classroom and set up a reading center, and they have their own books. Those books belong to that organization, from what I understand. They don't belong to the libraries.
So are you specifically just targeting one organization?
No,
because we're one of so many.
Okay, well then maybe there's another one. This is just the
This
one
seems
I'm
very
asking,
targeted.
I'm asking you a question. She was asking, do those books belong to the library or those books belong to you?
We install classroom libraries in the organization that I have taken part in. I've also been involved with other donation drives and book donations from libraries and the public, who just had a teacher who did a donors choose for classroom books that they need for their classroom. Those are not curriculum. Those are not specific instructional materials. They're all optional reading. It's not just, we put 12 classroom libraries in 60 schools that all have classrooms that have 1,000 books in them. We are such a fraction.
Okay, well,
I'm just clarifying why my organization.
Are those your books, or do those belong to the library? Do they belong to the
The books
school?
that we donated were donated to teachers in specific grades for their classroom use. They are not part of the school library.
Right, so we need to clarify, I think, are we solely focusing on the library books in the school library, in that one school library, or the books in the schools in general? Because that would be a much bigger monster to take on. And if that is something that we want to take on, we're going to have to really set some standards for that. Because, again, as someone who's in the schools every day, there's a lot of books in the schools that aren't just in the library.
We'll just look at the ones in the library and the ones that are in the library, and other books that some people find extremely offensive. Maybe we could make a list of some of those parents, because some books are really very vile. I'll just tell you, they're really very bad. And maybe make a list of those and say, if these books are there, we want to be sure that they're not put into our libraries. And if they happen to be in there.
You are suggesting that we're taking books out of the libraries then?
No, they have to have a record. Well, they may. I don't know. It's not up to me.
I'm just trying to get clear on what
They have
what
to go through the
plan is.
reconsideration process.
Okay, so we're making lists of books.
They will go through
that
the
will go through
reconsideration. No, I'm not doing any of this. I'm trying to fix the policy.
Why would the
Well,
standards?
why don't we start with the policy? Like I say, I'm trying to get them to where they don't have to go through the reconsideration process. Let's take care of it on the front end instead of having to take care of it on the back end. No, I'm not talking about, I'm not gonna look at these books and tell you which ones need to be there and which ones don't. That's gonna be under the policy if they don't meet the policy.
Yeah, you just gave us a list, so, I mean, it was in our packet, so that's why we think we're supposed to look at books, when you give us a list of books.
No, these are books of concern that were sent to me. I was just giving you all some information. If you want, you might want to add some books on here. You may want to put a note, my dear, this book is fine. I don't know. I'm not going through and looking at all these books. Some of these I have gone and read to see what concern parents.
So we're
But no, we're
trying
not going
to
through these books and saying we're taking this book out. And that's not what this list is for. This list is for some books that were sent to me by parents and by others that said, Rhonda, we have a problem with these books. Will you look at this book? And
So we're hoping to improve or edit the policy, the school board policy, and also the school librarian handbook policy, because they already have a selection policy. So my question is, what
Okay,
is
my question is, if the handbook is working, how did these books get through?
Well, did the people go through the reconsideration process
you.
or not?
Well,
That would be the first thing is,
Meg,
did these
this
people just email you about these books?
This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about.
Did they go
How
through the
many books
reconsideration process and
You know
then,
how many kids may already have this book in their hands?
Yeah, so yes or no? They have gone through the reconsideration process?
I think we
or-
should fact check with the district on that, because I've requested open records request of the review, what is it called, the citizens reconsidering instructional material forms. Now, I do know that this handy little link that we have is fairly new after some legislation over the last year, but I'm still waiting for some of the information to come to me. But I did request for like the last 5 years, how many times this process has been used, was it accessible, what was the resolution, and what was reconsidered.
outcome?
So, to my knowledge, at this point, just verbally, I've heard that there's only been one that's actually made it to a board situation, and that hasn't been used nearly as prevalently as the verbal requests and bypassing of the process and coming to the board has been. Ultimately, the board has the final say, but it's been superseding the process. So we're saying that the policy doesn't work, but we're not giving the policy the opportunity to work. So I would request that something that's been newly implemented, we haven't even had that form up a year. It's not even been up a year. We don't even have data from it yet to even dig into.
Okay. I'm gonna let someone else go on, because what I'm saying is,
It's relevant, Rhonda.
if the policy is working, how do these books end up in our library? So obviously, it needs to be changed. The process needs to be
It
changed.
takes
The way we.
Okay. It takes time. Do you know how many books are in this school?
Yeah. No, these are not old books.
Maybe parents
These are
need to be
Go ahead,
educated
right
about
here.
the policy.
Yes, I was looking over this library collection and optional materials from, policy number, 4402. And it's kind of confusing because it says that the books will be continually monitored. Who's monitoring these books?
The librarian.
The librarian.
Okay, but
Separate
and they're
material.
monitoring the optional materials also?
It's in the handbook that they have to go through it, I think yearly, annually.
Okay, so they're
I'm not sure.
following the rules that.
And then they rely on partnership for people to bring reconsideration, which it sounds like, usually you point out, we forgot how to talk to people and have a conversation.
It says they will be monitored, but then it says that there will be books that have not been reviewed by school personnel. So that's confusing, like it's leaving a loophole right there. You can have books that's supposed to be monitored, but they're, then it
That
says
was
that
the,
may
that was
not
the,
be.
that was the paragraph I read. I don't know if you were here yet, but
Yes,
read this paragraph. That's why I said I don't know how that paragraph got through without someone questioning.
Well, the librarians detailed how they would play out that policy in their handbook, and they cite that policy and how they would handle it in the handbook.
And obviously, it's not working, which is what she
So
said.
I don't think
as we're
that's
talking about next
actually-
steps, I would just encourage, I think what has come up a lot is the sheer volume of books and the personnel hours that we have available to monitor the books. There's a big disconnect there. So if this is something that's important to the district, I think we've got to put money behind it.
Yes.
And,
Well,
implementing
right now,
systems and
we'll worry about
processes.
the money later.
Well,
Right now,
but we
we're
can't
worried about
put a
fixing
policy
this
in place
policy.
that doesn't work because we don't have the money to pay for
Amen.
it.
Well, surely
Amen.
we can vet some books without having to go up on taxes.
Who decides
seriously.
which books get vetted? I mean, there's millions and
They
millions of
all
books.
should be vetted.
Well,
They all should be vetted. We shouldn't be putting books on the shelf that no one's looked at and no one's been able to, this should not happen.
Professional review.
That's
the whole
the
point.
whole
It's
point.
like
Okay,
supplemental.
let's get back to where we started.
They're
I'm
professional
sorry, I
review
can't see
boards.
you down there.
The librarians use professional review boards that rate the books.
Just-
And so they actually have that in part of their policy.
Listen, have you ever seen some of the books, seen some of the movies that win awards? They're some of the worst movies out
Movies
there.
are not the same
So
as books.
I know that those people that review these books, some of those have their own agenda too. I did read up on some of the organizations that we rely on to send us requests for books.
So are we talking about
books that
political
you need to put on your
affiliations or
shelf.
books?
So, that's not the end-all be-all. The end-all be-all in Hamilton County are the Hamilton County parents. And we're professionals and we know what's best for your kid. Doesn't always cut it for me because, as we've seen in the past couple of years, sometimes the professionals get it very wrong.
Well, that's why you have
And
policies.
so therefore, the parents get a say in this, and that's why we're putting it out there for all parents to see, all parents to look at, all parents to know the process if they have a problem with a book. A lot of parents didn't even know there was a process to reconsider. They did not know that, now they do. This is an informational meeting, and like I said, how do you want to proceed? In order, if you want to look at some of these books, you can look at these books. If you come, when we meet again, if you have some questions about the policies, you can bring those questions about the policies.
Do we
and
need
what
to
can
email
do.
somebody about creating an agenda for next time so that we have like a plan in place on how we're
Well,
going
that's
to?
why I'm having this meeting tonight. It's an organizational meeting to find out how you wanted to proceed.
We didn't
That's
know
what
that.
this is. That's what I say. How do you want, I've asked whether you want to divide up into groups. If you want to just, on your own, go over and try to digest some of this, do some of your own research, see what you can find out. There are a lot of school districts that have already done a lot of summaries of some of these books. There's all kinds of information on the internet. I just need to know what we need to do to fix these policies that keep some of the books that are on our school shelves, keep them from getting there to begin with.
Okay.
I still think it's important for the school board to set the policy and once they have set the policy.
We have, Kathy.
I know, but it was 28, it was in 18, which does 4
And
years.
that's why we're going to recommend, because like I said, the school board did not even know the process for how books got into the library.
Well, then, if the school, it should start with the school board, which
It
is
did,
our.
and that's why they've made this committee.
Yeah.
And so
And they
this
aren't
is,
willing to, because normally policy review is the review on administration, and the school board, and it's a process. I was on the policy committee for 2 years, and that is where I would that's where it should start, instead, we don't make policy.
we're not making policy. We are making recommendations. We're telling them what this committee has found out and give back to them, because most of the school board, I mean, they're not going to sit down and go through a lot of this because
Well,
they
they
don't have
need
any
to sit down and
idea.
go through it, that's their job.
No, I have a job. That's my second job.
I just have one last
I have a
question
job.
and I'm done. My last question is, shouldn't supplemental reading be held to the same standards as library books though? Just asking, I mean, shouldn't all books in the school that children are exposed to, shouldn't they all be held to the same standard? Or should we say, well, in the classrooms, you can have your vol material or whatever, but in the library, we've got them, we got it.
You're talking
Well,
about
let's
three
just-
different things.
Yeah.
You have optional reading, you have supplemental
Yeah.
reading, and you have
I'm
and you have
talking about-
curriculum.
No, I'm
So you
talking
have
about books in
different-
a school.
But they have different laws that protect them
Then
in
you're adding
different ways.
curriculum
There's
books in
different
there if you say
criteria
books in
for all
school.
of them and how they're used and how they're implemented. It's not just thrown around for no reason. You have all these people with master degrees who curate these because they have different purposes, different jobs, they have different reasons. They have to hit all of these ELA standards that they have to meet. They all have jobs, but optional reading is different.
But none of these
It's
people
separate.
have jobs without children that they are teaching at schools. And what Rhonda just said earlier, you take if this stuff doesn't stop and if there's not a line drawn in the sand, these public schools are gonna be no more. Because the people are gonna take their children out. The money's gonna follow the
I
child.
don't have a crystal ball. I'm just talking about what we're here
No,
for today.
I'm talking about real life. We're talking about children. We're talking about children at school and what they're exposed to.
Rhonda, has the school
It's
board
just not appropriate.
requested that the district come up with an option for tracking their reading materials? Because I wonder if the director of schools has a list, because they have a master list of all the libraries. Have you asked those that have to deal with this every day if they would offer a solution? Have we asked them what they would propose as a solution, since they're gonna be the ones tasked with this job? Because while I can come up with ideas of grandeur and how I would love to have things
Well, there's a
ran.
bunch of them are sitting right behind you.
Well,
so
I'm not
they're
their
in this
boss,
meeting.
you are.
That's why they're here. They're here.
I know, but-
And they're hearing this conversation, so if they have
I'm not
recommendations
supposed
to
to
the
talk
board,
about specific
they are
employees.
free to say so as well. No, I am not their boss, the superintendent is their
Oh,
boss.
okay. Yeah,
I
that's
can't
true.
tell them to do anything.
You
They're
can
here
ask.
listening to this, and the superintendent is the one who tells them what to do. I am not their boss, I am their boss's boss.
I get that, I'm
And
wrong.
so,
You're right.
no, I don't go over there and tell Blake what he needs to do, or any of the rest of them over there, what they need to do. The superintendent does. So they're hearing all this discussion, and from this, if they glean that there's something that maybe that they're not doing, or that needs to be changed in this policy, they're welcome to say so as well.
On the topic of how we move forward, so I've been kind of thinking and listening for a minute, and I kind of wrote down 4 main categories I'm hearing. And for the record, I don't necessarily agree that all these categories are the right idea, but some of the ones that I probably think are, others don't. So I'm going to list, if you'll give me leave for a second, the 4 categories I'm hearing, and then maybe others could then chime in if I've missed a broad category. And then we can decide how many of these we actually want to tackle, how many sessions we think that's going to take. So here's the 4, and again, this is just me listening. So number 1 is case study. So the question has come up a couple times, how did something get in there? So that's one possible category approach, is pick 1 or 2 things and figure out, well, how did they get there? What do we fix out of that? 2, this is the one that I suggested, review the policies that are in the library handbook or what have you, and is there anything missing that we want to make sure is considered? Category 3, an examination of where we interface with outside organizations, whether that's library professional review organizations, whether that's people bringing books into the school, examine or try to shed some light on exactly what those interfaces are. 4th category is define some no-go topics, things that people want to say the end should not be in the school. So again, for the record, I don't think necessarily all these categories are good ideas, but I'm just one person. Those are the categories I'm hearing. So if you think I missed something big there, or you think that's worth adding on to, maybe the next step is to say what categories as a whole I missed.
I like the idea of reviewing the policies, and number 2, and reading the handbook and seeing if we have any places where it's lacking.
So,
and the only problem I have with the case study is some of the librarians walk into a library, and they didn't put all those books on the shelves, and there's no record. But it is interesting to ask how it gets on there. I met for 2 hours with each librarian, and I came out with a pretty big idea of how things can be problematic, how they handle that, and how it gets on there. And I came up with, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, a lot of respect for librarians and a big idea that they're doing better than I ever could.
So are there categories that I missed entirely? Are there and again, I don't know if the next step is to figure out in what order we want to tackle these. I know some of them, again, may or may not be good ideas to particular people here, but I'm hearing enough from enough people, just in my opinion, that those seem to be the big categories.
Okay, Nancy, no, hold on, Nancy, you had your hand up for a long time.
I was just wondering, you have the student code of conduct, what children can or cannot say in the classroom and how they are to behave. So wouldn't it be just very simple to use that in determining if the child can't say it or speak that or call a name to a teacher or another child? Why would you have it in, what purpose would have it in books for them to read, for one thing?
There's books about bullying, and I want my people to read about bullying so they know how it goes down and have some exposure. So just because it's against how they act is not how I want it to be stated in their books. So they might mismatch, but that's also
But some of those books that
there.
I've been reading here had nothing to do with that. It was just a crazy story made up to use all those words.
Yeah, and
they
again,
had no purpose whatsoever in it. And another thing about the books that when you review these, the libraries, that evidently they don't have time to read every one, so they look at the reviews. I'm wondering, are they rated X or PG, or how do they know? Is there a way in those reviews?
Yeah, there is. The
so
ALA
it will
has
say
a lot of
has language or something. So when you're reviewing those, when you're reading the reviews, it would say in there whether or not it had bad language or sexual content or something like that. So you do know when you're picking those at that point that that's what's in that book.
Right, but you also look at the age level, and if it's appropriate, mean, I don't want to be explicit here, but we know high schoolers are having sex, and so there may be, there may be sexual content.
Not all high schoolers are having sex.
No.
That
could be false. I mean, I'm about to have, I totally understand, but like, that's part of, you know, it may.
So
it may
you're
be-
saying unless they read a book, they don't know how to have sex, is that it?
No.
Or that we should encourage it.
As
Can
part
I
of the whole
ask
going
that-
forward, is it correct that we're still on the hook for reporting back to the school board for the March meeting? Is that the plan?
Well, if we need more time, we can have more time.
Okay.
It's whatever.
David?
Yeah.
When you were making a list, I want to formally ask Rhonda, how can we formally invite or request that the attorney and someone invite, because I know we can't ask, or we can't make them be here, but invite one of the directors or someone who is much more fluent in the policy to be here, along with the attorneys who can help us.
We have someone right here.
But he's on our committee, so I feel like that's a little different. I would like to have an
He's on the
outside.
committee. He's actually not on the committee. He is here as a representative.
Okay,
from
so
the
what is your
law.
capacity, sir? I didn't hear the introduction.
I'm Jamie Harris. I'm the high school teacher and learning director. I'm here.
Okay, so policy is where,
So I can help clarify that.
Okay.
I do want to say, just to clarify, just going back to something Jamie said earlier. In the packet that Ms. Thurman gave us, policy 4.402, selection of instructional materials. I just want to make sure we're talking the same policies.
I feel like there's a lot of misinformation.
Reconsideration of instructional materials would be really helpful to look at and dive into. Those are speak exactly what we're talking about.
I think that was what I was asking, because I feel like there's a lot of confusion, just in my opinion, and I may even be wrong in this, but there's the terminology in some of the policy gets a little hairy, and so sometimes you feel like you don't know if you're talking about instructional policy, optional reading, or stuff that's in the libraries, and so all of those have different policy that applies to them separately. So if we're changing policy, we have to know which lane we're in as to which policy we're reviewing for each different thing. And then as we're reviewing that, I would love to have the attorney present, because some of the things that we're proposing violate some rights, or we would like some clarification as to whether it does or doesn't under someone's recommendation. I would just like to have that safeguard to know that I'm not making a poor choice going forward.
Our school board attorney is not here tonight. He had.
That's why I said moving
plans.
forward. I get that.
I've spoken with him, yes. But like I said, since this was an organizational meeting, I didn't feel like we would really need him that much tonight, so I told him that was fine. But violating people's rights, I'm sorry, I'm not getting that, but whatever. Because I'm certainly not wanting to violate anyone's rights. I'm just wanting to, like I say, to inform the public about what their tax dollars are paying for, what's in our libraries,
I hope the attorney
process.
can clarify some of that, because I don't want, I mean, as you mentioned, we could be setting ourselves up for a lawsuit for violating students' First Amendment rights. So I am also eager for the attorney's input on that.
And I have one more thing to say. I know you keep talking about taxpayer dollars, but it needs to be really clear that until just a few years ago, and I wish Dr. Parker could speak to this, and I don't know if you remember, it was actually Dr. Robertson who helped us at the time, but he got us a line item in the budget. And was that like 4 or 5 years ago? So prior to that point, librarians were solely earning their own money. And so the majority of my library books, most certainly, I'm not trying to be ugly, but they're not necessarily taxpayer dollars at all. And so, and right now, the majority of my budget is probably from Hamilton County I mean, if it's a quarter of it, it's probably not even a quarter of it at this point. And so, I think that needs to be really clear, because we work really hard to raise money in order to provide books for our students, and even just simple supplies to run our libraries. And so, until just a few years ago, we weren't even a line item, which means we had nothing unless we were gifted something. So I think that
Well, I'm just talking about the schools. The schools belong to the
right,
parents.
but like my schools never gave me money. I had to earn it with book fairs. Like I was never, and I've been in from urban to suburban to now upper middle class schools, and I was never, except for one time, my very first year, was I given Title I money. I mean, it was just not. I just think that needs to be clear to everybody. The majority of the books in every library in Hamilton County was not paid for from Hamilton County School District.
That shouldn't exempt them from a standard though,
No,
or policy.
No, I'm not, but
And-
we
and
just.
She
I
was
think
just
what-
pointing out the taxpayer remarks that have been made. She was just
But
talking against that.
salary is taxpayer remarks.
Right, but not books on the shelves is what she was just clarifying. She
Sure.
wasn't saying, now
There
I'm
should
free
be
of
no
responsibility.
distinction between the two though.
Yeah, okay.
Zero.
Okay, so, so who wants, so to review the policies, so the next time we get together, you want this attorney here to explain the policies? Is that what I'm getting here?
Should we ask someone from the library leadership committee to come and explain the handbook? You're on, you're,
I helped write the handbook.
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
well done.
Okay. So, so everybody, Sherry, just be sure everyone has a copy of the,
I'll send it to
of the,
everybody, yes.
okay, send it to everyone. Then, you know, we had a lady come to our church one time who'd never been to church before. And it reminded me this, define no-go words and things like that. She asked, she started cussing in church, and my husband, being an elder, went to her and said, you know, you can't say these words at church. You know, they're just not acceptable. And she said, can you make me a list of words I can't say? He said, no, I can't. Can you imagine an elder sitting down writing all these? So I don't think we can define no-go words. We can't sit down and write I think that's like, here again, that's where it gets to community standards. And the standards should be, like Nancy was saying, should be things that are not acceptable in the classroom, words that are not acceptable in just a polite society. I mean, we can't go through and tell everybody every word they can't say, but it's kind of like pornography. You can't define it, but you know it when you see it. I mean, if you see some of these words, you know they're just not right. They're not okay for kids. They're just not okay. And we shouldn't have to make a list of those words that are no-go. Obscenity, the words obscenity, vulgar, so we should know what those words are.
In Tennessee law, they already defined obscenity.
Yeah,
But they didn't make a list of those words, so that's what makes it vague.
But the definition has already.
So-
been put in law.
Where is that? Do you know, Loretta? Is that documented? Where's that? Do you know where that's documented, or does anybody know?
Tennessee state law?
Yeah, which, do you know, like, where? I mean, Tennessee state law is pretty huge. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but, yeah, and like I say, they're looking at a new policy of this, or new legislators are looking at new legislation about obscenity to minors and things like this. So, like I say, that's a new, it's in here, it's in your list of material here.
It was
The new
proposed
state law is
today.
being.
It was proposed today, but it's not, it was just proposed today.
Okay,
So
that's what they're
it's
saying.
not,
I knew it was being proposed.
it's got a
yeah.
road.
And it took us a while, but we are defining our scope as just library books. Is that what we've
Library
decided?
books
And supplemental reading also, right?
Yeah.
Policy and standards. Policy and standards should be number one focus.
Okay,
Well-
okay.
Library books
Okay,
inside.
okay, we'll make we'll just, if we fix the policies, that should take them all in.
Yeah,
Exactly.
just reading material, how's that?
Yeah, reading.
So then now we're opening up technology?
Every reading material.
Because every kid
Reading
has a
materials.
Chromebook. Every kid has a Chromebook. So if we do all reading material, then we need to do curriculum, Chromebooks, library books.
Not textbooks.
The curriculum's
Not,
already
okay,
been
so
vetted.
everything that's on a Chromebook?
Oh, come on,
If
guys.
it's,
We've got to define
I
it.
understand. You know we can't, there is no way, it would be impossible.
That's why I think, that's why I'm just
Okay,
asking
then
what
okay,
the
just do
definition
library
of.
books and books that are provided in library and supplemental, the reading centers and libraries.
So the
And
books
our
in the
reading
classrooms
centers and libraries, how is that?
and on the school library shelves. The books on the
Not
classrooms
books in
and on the
classrooms.
school.
I would
books in
think
the
that the
classroom.
libraries would take in books on library shelves. I would think.
Well, the Chromebooks are already set to where they don't accept obscene language.
That's
Oh,
right.
no, it's not.
Yeah, the Chromebooks are.
I can get a Chromebook right now. I'll show you. Anyone bring me a Chromebook?
The issue, that's issued.
Yes, inside, underneath the network or outside the network.
They're supposed to be set.
Yes, they are.
Well, if they're not, then that's another issue.
Yeah, I've talked to the board about that as well.
Okay.
Ms. Thurman?
We need to do that.
So can you define the books again? If we're gonna get really detailed about policy, I just wanna know which ones we're doing. Library
Okay,
books.
The policies are here.
No, the ones that we're considering.
They're here.
Will you clarify
The
which
policy-
policies you want us to look at? Just give us the numbers and that would solve a lot of this.
Okay, you only have 3.
Right, but some is like
Uh,
advertising and
I know, and
behavior.
I just did that for obscenity reasons, to show you that we do have rules against obscenity when people talk about First Amendment rights. We do already have policies against that. So, that's why those were. So we're looking at basically a 4.402 and 4.403, I think. Aren't those the two?
Yes.
Okay, and then the reason that we put this other one, distributed materials in school, shows also we can't be handing out things in classrooms that are obscene. So a lot of those things are already covered. They're just not, evidently, we're just not,
Classroom libraries and school libraries, all the libraries.
So 403 is instructional materials and textbooks.
but if
And you
look
want us to,
if you look at the bottom, the library collection and optional materials.
okay. So just certain lines? Which lines?
It's all one policy. On page 2, number 9, takes in libraries. And 4.402.
And then in 4.403, the whole policy?
That policy right there is a reconsideration of instructional materials.
And textbooks. But you don't want us to look at that part of the policy?
We're just
That
Okay,
library
next.
collection and
I'll tell
optional
you what, let's
materials.
just work on this one, okay? We'll work on this one.
4.402?
Yeah,
Okay.
4.402. Yes, can we all agree that we all can work on this?
And we're thinking
And
about
without
classroom
having to bring
libraries.
in a million books. And like I said, if we can't even agree on this, people, we have some serious issues.
Ms.
If
Thurman?
we cannot agree
have
that we
serious
can get
issues because
together
we don't agree.
as a group of parents, educators, and professional people and say that some of this stuff is unacceptable, and how do we keep this out of our schools? Parents are going to lose complete and total confidence in public schools, and I don't blame them. This is why you get out into the weeds. This started out as something so simple, to fix the policies to where these books are not available to children and they sit on the book. And it takes a long time to go through this reconsideration of materials. It takes a long time to go through that process.
Oh, it's 15 days.
Not until the book gets, it's 50, you have to go through the summary, submit it, they go through it.
Do you have
15 days, and then they may decide to put it back on there.
Or you can
We don't
appeal to
know.
school board.
As a board, we don't know what books are being put back on there, and what books are taken off. And do we know that, Blake? Are we told about that when books are removed? I've never been notified while I've been on the board, I don't think.
So to my knowledge, and I'll let Jamie speak to that as well, there haven't been any books that have been removed. Most of these are handled for policy at a school level where an optional selection is given to the student to be able to complete. And so to my knowledge, I don't think that we have removed any through that process. Jamie, you have anything to add?
Yeah, so the first part of that policy deals with the school level. So if there is an objectable text, that's worked out school level for an alternative text. That's part of the policy. It doesn't get to the board unless that alternative text can not be worked out. And then, yes, it does go before the board.
So I say, since I've been on the board, I've been there since '04, I don't think it's ever happened. So all these books that parents have complained about are still on, but that's what I'm talking about. So if we can get it on the front end, because on the back end, it doesn't seem to be that we can be able to get that done, I guess.
Ms. Thurman, so today I came in on 2 wheels from Atlanta. Moving forward, is this going to be a monthly meeting?
I was thinking of probably, he was wanting us to report back in March, but that's just not going to happen. My next question was, when is Tuesday nights a good time? Tuesday at 5, is that a good night for most people? Call them out and.
No.
Because Thursday nights are usually when we have school board meetings, Monday nights are when we have agenda sessions. Wednesday night, a lot of people go to church and are not available, so that just don't leave but Friday and Tuesday. And Fridays are no-goes for me, and I'm sure they're for most of you.
What if we moved it to 6 o'clock? Would that help y'all?
Yeah.
Tuesdays at 6?
Tuesdays at
Are you still speaking once per month?
Hopefully it won't take very long.
I started saying it shouldn't take very long. The next time we come together, I hope that the attorney's here and we can kind of maybe fix this. So let's do it. Sherry, how about in 3 weeks maybe? Yeah, that's right. 3 weeks on a Tuesday. What is that date?
It's March 1st.
Okay, March the 1st. March the 1st. I tell you what, let's split the differences. Will 5:30 work?
There's a virtual budget meeting that night. I mean, I don't know if that's conflict, but we're doing the community budget meeting virtual, so that's the only thing I see. March 1st.
Because we're getting into budget session, so that does take up a lot of our time. But will that work for most people? Because there's probably one the next week too. isn't there?
I know a lot of people are gonna have scheduling issues, so I hate to even bring this up, but March 1st does not work for me.
Okay,
The 8th is
well
better
then
for
we're
me.
having that budget meeting that night anyway. So let's go to the next week and we'll put it
What
forward.
about 2 weeks from now?
Two
Two
weeks
weeks can
from
either
now.
come or
That's
not.
a good idea.
2
Yeah.
weeks.
Okay.
People
Yeah.
can come or they don't.
February the 22nd, does
Yeah.
that work for
Yep.
everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so we will try to have Scott here, our school board attorney, the next time maybe he will be available. And
5:30.
Let's do 5:30. 5:30 works.
Is there a way, is there a way to be offered, any meeting on Zoom, via Zoom, so
Sure.
that we could participate?
Well, I don't know, you'll have to ask the people that take care of that. I
It
don't
really
know.
does not work well in this setting.
Okay.
We get feedback, when we're trying to live stream,
Okay.
it just does not work well.
Okay.
We could do it, but it would not be, it would not be good.
Do you want us to come in with recommendations for this policy? that-
Yeah, I think that would be good. Just look over the policy and then we can talk to Scott about how to, if that language works or if it doesn't work. Like I said, a lot of this informational stuff is just show you the stuff that's out there, and show you what's the Tennessee State Legislature is looking at, to kind of fit our policy to that, because this, like I say, this was just proposed, but I will be real surprised if this does not pass. And also to get with Jamie and others and find out exactly why these books are not removed when parents have complained about them, exactly why they continue to be put back even after complaints. I'd like to hear that side too. We will just cover some of that the next time.
The policy says
Okay,
they
go
have to
ahead.
stay.
I just want to clarify that what you asked was, how many times has it come to our attention? And my reply was that we followed the policy.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
The policy says that the text stays in circulation unless through the policy it needs to be removed.
Yeah.
And we have not reached a moment where we need to enact the removal of it.
So that's why we need to fix the policy, which is exactly my point.
Well-
If nothing that has been brought before the vetting process has been removed,
So we're trying to make it easier to remove books?
no, we're trying to make it where these books don't get on the shelf to begin with, that show kids how to masturbate.
Right, but that wasn't what, the question was, how do we make it, how many times have the books been taken off the shelves or removed from circulation when they've been brought up? And then you said,
Never.
right, and then you said, well, we have to figure out a way to make that not happen.
Well, that's right, we need to figure out a way to keep this book off.
So if a parent complains and follows the reconsideration
Because if
process.
going through the vetting process is not keeping this book off the shelf, then we need to fix the policy.
I just had one question though. Did you earlier say that when a parent complains that the book stays in circulation and the child is offered an alternate book to read that meets the same curriculum standards?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, so
That's
why
the
not
correct
have all
option.
books there anyways, if there's the
There's
same
option.
curriculum standard in another book?
Because some
Why
people
lay the book on the
define
shelf?
vile differently.
Yes.
Like I know someone who wanted to have a book removed because it had divorce in it. And I know when Harry Potter came out, is a great example because a lot of people didn't want any of their kids reading about
Harry
which.
Potter, Peter Pan, none of that. We're talking
That
about
is exactly what I
sex,
said.
Foul content, that's.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sherry, what was that name again?
I mean, that's.
I would just like to ask if any of the books that we've discussed have gone through this review
Right.
process. Can we get confirmation if any of the books that have been referenced during this committee have gone through? I think
I
a
know
couple
at
may.
least I need two or. I know-
Maybe two, but out of that entire list, I feel like we're changing policy over 2 books, and I think that should be held into account. I mean, I just think that if people have issues with books, they need to go through the policy and handle it with their principals in their school. That hasn't happened. We don't have data, we don't have any track saying that process has happened. So I feel like we're making changes based off of hearsay. And to me, legally, that doesn't make sense, that we're making changes based off of gossip.
Parents don't even know these books are in the schools. They're not aware of
If that
it.
hasn't come home to their child and they haven't had it, then they don't have to go through the process.
And maybe again, that means that we need to really do an intense education of the parents about what the policy is, so that if they choose to challenge a book, they know what to
What
do.
tools are
And the
available.
process can
We are
work.
doing that right now, hence why this is being live streamed.
And I know
Parents are
several
hearing this
parents
now
have done
for the
that Power
first
School
time.
thing.
Sometimes parents are hearing this for the first time. They had no idea, and not all parents see all books that their kids bring home and are reading. Some parents are very much unaware, and some kids know if their parents are going to object, they will not bring the book home and lay it out for their parents to see.
Sure.
That's-
Not saying that kids don't do
May I
that.
ask a
So-
process question?
Sure.
Will we be taking a vote on our recommendations to the board? Because I don't feel like we necessarily have a consensus about what recommendation needs to be made, or if any
Well,
recommendation.
we'll see. Well, I don't know.
I mean,
We'll see.
I would ask for that, and that maybe we go on record as saying whether we are in favor of this recommendation.
We'll just make recommendations. The board's going to do what they want to do with our recommendations. If we may have 2 or 3 different recommendations,
Yeah,
we
I
don't
think
have to.
that may be-
I mean, it's not like we're voting on the policy. We just have to make recommendations.
It just
That's all we
feels
have
more
to do.
democratic that way.
Do what?
It just feels more democratic to feel like we all have a vote, but that's up to you, Rhonda.
Well, you can make a recommendation, and you can make one, and you can make one. We'll take all the recommendations.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's more like a republic than a democracy. So we can all have a say. So, anyway, okay, so we'll see you then on the 22nd at 5:30.